Hey guys, I'm really congested in this video, sorry about that, but the show must go on. So anyway, hopefully you guys still enjoyed this video, just try to ignore that I sound like I'm about to die. This is probably going to be the most challenging video in this series, because everyone loved the movie Logan. Even people who don't like the X-Men loved it. I've seen people say it's the best X-Men movie, and it's hard to argue with that. But part of my goal for doing these X-Men Fix videos is not only improving each movie, but also trying to work the movies in such a way where they all fit together, and you don't have so many continuity problems. I've talked before about how these problems made it a little difficult to enjoy these movies as much as I wanted to. Imagine watching Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, spoilers for that movie, and then Dumbledore dies at the end, and Harry, Hermione, and Ron decide they're not coming back to Hogwarts the following year. And then when you watch Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Dumbledore is still alive, and Harry, Hermione, and Ron all go back to school like it's nothing. That's what it feels like watching the X-Men movies. They reference each other, but then characters change nationalities, will show up in different decades but are the same age, or they don't age at all for 30 years. It's a lot to take in. Fellow YouTuber Sid Part 2 once commented that the Wolverine trilogy is the only trilogy where each installment is its own continuity. He's right, and that's a very frustrating aspect of these movies. Even though this is probably the best X-Men movie, even if it's not the most fun and therefore isn't the one I go back and rewatch the most, I will be changing some stuff about this movie with this video. So if you like this movie and don't want to hear anyone talk about what they would have done differently, turn this off right now. But if you've been enjoying my takes on the X-Men movies so far, well, you've come this far, might as well see what I have to say about Logan. By this point, it goes without saying, but anything I've done in my previous fix videos on the X-Men, that's all still in place with the fix for this movie. So let's get into it. So two big changes. One, we will not be setting this in the year 2029. My fix takes place a month or two after the events of my fix for XMen Apocalypse, which I have taking place in 2003. This is mostly because over the course of 3 years, you get 3 different awful futures in the X-Men movies. It took them over 15 years to get that many awful futures in the comics. I think doing that, especially in such close proximity, dilutes the whole "this is a horrible future" idea. The other big fix is one you've probably figured out if you've been keeping up with my videos, but Professor Xavier is a pretty big part of this film, and in my fix videos, I killed him off in the Dark Phoenix story, so he won't be in this movie. Well, not exactly. If you didn't watch my video on what I would do differently with X-Men Apocalypse, near the end, Wolverine, fighting Apocalypse's horseman, horsewoman, Pestilence, got hit with her full power, making him very sick. So sick that in this movie, he is dying. His healing factor cannot cut the mustard, so he's got maybe weeks left to live, if he's lucky. This is a lot like the Logan movie we got, though the sickness comes in a different way. And he's got these fever hallucinations of Professor Xavier, which is kind of like what he had in the Wolverine movie, but with Jean Grey. This way, I can keep some of the interactions with Professor Xavier, which is pretty important in this movie. In the comics, Wolverine has a reputation for being a solo act, even though he's been part of every superhero team in comics. But if you do a solo Wolverine book, he can be the only character in an issue, just 22 pages of him hunting a poacher or something, and it's just him with his thoughts. You can do that in a comic, but in a movie where you don't get internal narrations and monologues, you've got to have dialogue, and to do that, you've got to have another character. And I like the idea of Wolverine in his final days on Earth imagining himself talking to the man who showed him a better way. We will also be changing the main villain, Dr. Xander Rice, who is apparently from the X-23 solo comics, although I admit I haven't read those, so I'm not familiar with the character. In the movie, they talked about how Rice's father was responsible for the adamantium process, and even with all the continuity problems over the course of these movies, with how much the films like shoving William Stryker into the movies, even when he doesn't belong, I assumed that Stryker was still the man responsible for the adamantium, so I thought maybe this Rice guy was Stryker's son, but I don't think that's what they were going for. So instead of William Stryker's maybe son, we will be using Bolivar Trask, who was in Days of Future Past, as well as my altered version of X-Men Apocalypse. In my X-Men Apocalypse video, the Horseman Polaris raised the Alkali Lake facility for Apocalypse, who intended to use William Stryker's technology against humanity, but she didn't get very far in her mission. The X-Men, in a hurry to stop Apocalypse, left all the stuff she brought to the surface out, and in one of the last scenes of the video, Trask takes all of it for himself. After studying Stryker's notes and processes from the unsubmerged Alkali Lake base, he has created what he calls the next generation of Sentinels, human volunteers who are augmented to hunt mutants. They call themselves Reavers. The Reavers are all soldiers who have lost their families to mutants. Most recently, some of Apocalypse's horsemen, Pestilence and Banshee, killed many humans, supplying Trask with plenty of people to volunteer for this process. The Reavers of the comics and the movie don't have much depth besides we're evil robot men. In the comics, they don't like Wolverine because he mutilated them, but that can only go so far. The movie Reavers have even less going for them, so this would at least tell us what makes these guys tick. In the movie, Dr. Rice Rice is seemingly a biology scientist, a genius in cloning, but also he's a mechanical genius as well with the creation of the Reavers, which isn't impossible, but seems a little unlikely. Although I guess it is possible that with this being the year 2029, maybe this is just typical prosthesis and Xander had nothing to do with it. I don't know. Bolivar Trask is already a mechanical genius with the Sentinels being his big thing, and after studying William Stryker's process on how to cybernetically enhance someone, it makes sense the Reavers would be his thing here. And if you're wondering how I will work in X-23, famously a clone of Wolverine and my favorite part of this movie, you can still have Dr. Rice working with Trask. The government wants to explore the idea of using mutants to hunt other mutants, like Stryker did, but Trask isn't happy with that, and he just wants to stick with the robot stuff. We begin with Logan kicking some Reaver butt somewhere. It'll be 10 minutes or more into the movie before you get a flashback/fever hallucination showing a conversation Cyclops and Storm had with Wolverine when he was still hospitalized. They wanted to wait and take Wolverine with them when they relocated, but Wolverine wouldn't have any of it. I'll just slow you guys down. You don't need to be looking after me right now. You've got the rest of the flock to take care of. Wolverine will be the one to suggest that someone needs to take care of William Stryker's technology that went missing after Polaris raised it from Alkali Lake. They don't like this, but they know better than to argue with Wolverine. They say their farewells, knowing with how sick Logan is, they won't be seeing each other again. But Wolverine never wanted a quiet death. He wants to go out doing something meaningful, and keeping someone from following in William Stryker's footsteps seems to be the most meaningful thing he can think of. Wolverine tracked down the missing Stryker tech to a series of labs, each one a dead end, until he finally encounters the Reavers. The movie did a pretty good job showing this, but Logan is sick and is not the fighting machine that he was in earlier movies. He can barely hold his own against 5 baseline humans, but the Reavers have robotic enhancements, so they end up nearly killing him. The Professor X hallucination gives Logan the help that he needs to get out of this situation, but it doesn't feel like a win, just putting off the inevitable. Gabriella, the scientist who works with Trask and Rice, will enlist Logan's help for more or less the same reasons she did in the movie. He's the last X-Man in the country, and she's already seen that he's willing to stand up against the Reavers, even at the cost of his own life, so he might be her best chance. But Logan isn't as much of a recognizable celebrity here as he was in the movie. Sure, the X-Men are well known, but they're also wanted by the government, so Logan is keeping it pretty low profile. Gabriella finds him by using Caliban. Xander and his group are doing mutant cloning to create mutants who will be answerable to the government, so they need someone to track mutants they can use. While the government isn't very fond of mutants, this part of the operation is very off the books. Gabriella shoots Caliban before she leaves, a Cassian Andor kills that one guy moment from Rogue One. Caliban isn't innocent, but Gabriella can't risk Xander and Bolivar using him to find her and Laura after they escape. Gabriella finds Logan, and the key difference here is the other kids that Xander created are still imprisoned at the lab Gabriella and Laura came from. In the movie, Gabriella's message for Logan said she wasn't sure the other kids were still alive, and maybe I missed something in the movie, but I wasn't sure how they all escaped. The movie makes it seem like Xander and the Reavers are only after Laura, but why wouldn't they be tracking all of these kids if they've all gone AWOL? And since we're on the subject, I also find it strange that Xander already has X-24, who seems to be a better weapon than Laura. Sure, Laura does kill X-24, but it's through strategy and not sheer strength. And as Gabriella says, a soldier who doesn't want to fight is useless, making X-24 the better weapon for these guys. Which makes me wonder why they would even need X-23 back in the first place. Gabriella tells Logan her story, everything about Xander Rice working with Bolivar Trask and how they've been working on accelerated cloning of various mutants. She wanted to get all the kids out of the facility, but they caught on to her plans before she could act, so she was only able to get Laura out. Her plan was to take all of the kids, even the kidnapped mutants, to Avalon, a place spoken of in whispers as almost a mythical safe haven for mutants. In the movie, it was Eden, and no, this is not my inner King Arthur fanboy coming out. Avalon is a thing in like 1 or 2 X-Men comics. There was this guy in the 2099 comics called the Driver. His whole thing was shuttling mutants to safety in Avalon. And it was a thing in the original Age of Apocalypse comics too, though there it was the Savage Land. And much as I would have loved seeing the Savage Land in at least one of these movies, this is not the movie to do that. Instead of Wolverine finding out Avalon isn't real like he did in the movie, he's skeptical the mutants will be safe anywhere with how much anti-mutant hysteria is ramping up. In the movie, Gabriella wants to hire Wolverine to take her and Laura to North Dakota, but here she wants him to help her get back into the base where the other kids are being imprisoned and helps bring them. Wolverine says he cannot be looking out for a scientist and a little kid when he's trying to take down Bolivar Trask and his whole operation. Gabriella will insist that Laura can take care of herself, and Gabriella says she's willing to die to get the kids out, and she would rather die than live knowing that they're still in prison. Wolverine still says that going up against these guys is dangerous, and if he's babysitting on top of barely being able to keep himself alive, he will fail, and Bolivar will get away and unleash Stryker's technology onto the world. The Professor X hallucination will tell Logan that after Wolverine had stabbed Rogue in the chest in the first movie, he got some pushback from the other X-Men to throw Wolverine out and wash his hands of him, but the Professor knew Logan could be saved. Logan is sufficiently guilt-tripped, and he decides to help Gabriella and Laura get back into the base. We will get a big action piece at the base, but we'll most mostly try to keep the focus on Logan, Gabriella, and Lara. Logan and the audience will find out Lara has claws like Logan. Gabriella will die during the raid on the base, probably killed by Xander, and one of the escapee mutants will use their fire powers to cause a big enough diversion to allow everyone to escape. Logan is focused on trying to kill Trask and Xander, but the Professor X hallucination tells Logan he should go with the kids. You might be thinking this is similar to X-Men Origins Wolverine, with Wolverine rescuing a bunch of mutant kids from a secret mad scientist lab. And it is, but in my fix for that movie, we didn't have a lab or experiments on mutant children. And since this movie already has mutant kids needing a rescue, it will work fine here. After Wolverine and the kids all escape, one of our bad guys will find a map in Gabriella's pocket. Now they know where the kids are going. And even though the Sentinels are back in full production at this point, Xander says, no, we are not bringing them out, we want these kids alive. Plus, Sentinels are really expensive to build, and Polaris destroyed a whole bunch of them in XMen Apocalypse, so we can't spare too many of them anyway. Wolverine is now in a dilemma, because Trask, Xander, and the Reavers are all still alive. They mostly only did structural damage to the facility, but he isn't sure the kids can make it to Avalon alone. In his brain, he knows Trask and his allies need to be stopped. That's what he said in America 4. But in his heart, voiced by the Professor X hallucination, he knows these kids need someone to show them the way, like the Professor showed Wolverine the way. We will get an argument between the oldest kid in the group and Logan. The kid is mad Logan didn't protect Gabriella, and he asks why they should go with him since he can barely protect himself, much less anyone else. Lara will stand up for Logan, and they agree Wolverine will do his best to help the kids get where they're going. They will steal a few vehicles, and Wolverine will take the rear, because that's probably where Trask and his men would try to get them. Lara will ride with Wolverine in his car, and this way we're not splitting the screen time too much with a bunch of other characters we don't know. They stop at the casino to trade in the stolen vehicles to cover their trail, but the Reavers are already here. They figured Logan would at least be coming through, since it's on the way to where the map said that Gabriella was taking the kids. We get a big fight, they just barely escape. The kids are beginning to wonder if this is even the same guy that they've heard stories about their entire lives. They travel a little more, and they meet the family with the horses. In the movie, Logan is the one who doesn't want to stay with them, in case Lara pops her claws and blows their cover. But here, he's the one who suggests that they stop somewhere and spend the night. The rest of the kids say, no, too dangerous, we're almost there, just another 10 hours of driving. Wolverine says, you guys can pull an all-nighter, I cannot. I need the rest. The leader of the group says he will take the others and keep going, and they will wait for Logan at their destination. Lara will stay with Logan. As I mentioned, I'm not crazy about X-24 being our big heavy that Logan tussles with in the final act of the movie. I don't think he brings that much to the movie, at least as far as plot is concerned, and he definitely takes away from the Reavers, who I enjoyed before his introduction. So the Reavers are the ones who attack the house to capture Lara instead of X-24. They don't deliberately kill any of the family, but in the process of trying to take Lara quietly, they will be discovered by the dad, and he gets shot accidentally. Then the rest of the family will come out after the Reavers who are getting away with Lara, and Xander will shoot them. The Reavers are mad at mutant kind for the loss of human life, so they wouldn't go after civilians with such gusto. But Xander can be as evil as we like, and doesn't care who gets mowed down as long as he gets his property back. Lara manages to slice and dice, and she and Logan will cut through this group of Reavers. They barely escape. Lara has to take Logan to the doctor. They leave. Lara asks why Logan didn't stay behind to kill Trask and Xander. Logan says that wasn't all of the Reavers, and he's afraid Lara's friends are in trouble. They get to their destination, which is a dock with a bunch of small boats and a much bigger boat a few yards out. In the movie, their destination was North Dakota, but I'm changing it to one of the coastal states, either Oregon or Washington. I'm not the first person to point out how over 70% of the X-Men movies all have a scene in a forest. And while I think the forest scenes in Logan are pretty good, I don't think anyone could give me a reason why the finale had to be set in a forest. Putting it on the coast with the boat that will take the kids to Avalon, that's like our Twin Pines Mall moment in Back to the Future. An attainable goal that's in sight, but the hero still has stuff to overcome to get there, like a car that breaks down, or evil cyborgs trying to kidnap children. Wolverine and Lara will get there to see that Wolverine was right, the rest of the Reavers are here, and Trask and Xander are on their way in a helicopter. We get our big final fight scene. Logan plans to keep the Reavers busy, while Lara frees the kids and gets them to the boat. She leaves, he summons his last bit of berserker rage, and takes out several of the Reavers, but it's not enough. They start to get the better of him as Trask and Xander come in. Trask is ready to use a special adamantium bullet to put down the mutant who took out most of his human sentinels, but Xander says that they could start from scratch on the X-20 project and create several clones of Wolverine who could all be as strong as Wolverine once was. Trask agrees, and they're about to load him up, and Lara comes back to save the day. Wolverine will kill Trask, who tries to shoot Lara with the adamantium bullet, and Lara will kill Xander. With Trask's dying breath, he took one of the dismembered Reaver arms and impaled Wolverine with it, so he gets his brutal, gruesome death like in the movie that we got. I don't know if this would be too cheesy, but as Logan draws his last breath, we will see the Professor Xavier hallucination slowly fade away. I love that Logan doesn't make it to Avalon, if it even exists. This reminded me of Moses from the book of Exodus. He is leading the children of Israel, but he doesn't actually get into the promised land.
Hey, don't get religious on me, okay?
Okay, how about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome? Max leads the kids to their own promised land, but he doesn't get to go there himself. Not sure if any of this was intentional in the movie, but that's all great stuff. And that's it for my take take on Logan. It's not that different from the movie that we got. Really only two big things that I changed to put it more firmly in the X-Men movie timeline. And then one big change I did because I just didn't love it in the movie. But what did you guys think? With this being such a well-loved movie, I'm going to say this one probably won't be many people's favorites, but I enjoyed doing this one, so I hope you guys did, at least in the context of these videos that I've been doing. And next week, I'll be gifting you with another video in this fixed verse, so if you like what I've been doing, be sure to check that out. And I do other videos around here too, so look for those if you're interested. And if you like this video, find your clone and watch it with her. In the meantime, I'll see you guys in the future. Catch you later.